Lovely. So I'm super excited about our guests this evening. So we've got the wonderful Penny Green coming to talk to us today. So just a little bit about her, just briefly. Penny studied countryside management at Agricultural College before going on to work for several different organisations, including Sussex Wildlife Trust, Sussex Biodiversity Record Centre. She's currently the resident ecologist at Knepp Estate and Rewilding Project, where she seems to do just about everything, to be honest, from managing volunteers to some biological monitoring, which I'm sure we will hear about later. She also runs the Knepp Wildland Podcast, which she has sort of many different guests on there, covers lots of different areas of conservation and the environment. She also does about a million other things, which I think she can probably tell you a bit more about than I can. So without any further ado, Penny, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me along this evening. This has been quite fun, actually, because I haven't obviously not many people have got to talk about their life. So I've had to write this talk, and it's been really interesting thinking about how I got to where I am now and what an interesting journey I've had. So it's been a real pleasure doing this. So thank you very much for asking. So here you go. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully that is looking good for you guys. Is that good? Brilliant. Perfect, in which case I'll make a start. So my conservation career. So I have been so lucky that I've been able to have this career. It has kind of emerged as I've gone on. It's kind of naturally evolved, and I haven't really ever had like a target in mind of where I hope to be, but I've ended up at the most wonderful place. And as Jasmine said, I'm now the ecologist at the Knepp Rewilding Project. So you know, there's so much to get involved with there and so much to learn. It's just, I feel like I'm at the pinnacle of my career, and I feel very lucky to be there. And so I'm very happy to share with you how I got there. So at school, I did GCSEs, and I didn't find them too difficult, quite enjoyed them. Then I did A-levels, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point. So I did music, French and biology, which is a very strange mix. And at the end of them, I found I didn't really do that well at A-levels. I wasn't really academically minded, although I was quite more practical. And then we had like, you know, these conservation career advice people, and you have to do like this test. And they said, oh, have you thought about being like a wildlife ranger? I was like, God, that sounds fun. So what I did is I found out where my local agricultural college was, because I felt like, although I had been offered a place at university, that perhaps academia wasn't for me. And so I set off to this local agricultural college, which isn't too far away from where I live. And I did a national diploma, and this was really practical. And at Brinsbury College, I learnt everything from how to drive a tractor, how to use a chainsaw, how to lay a hedge, through to coppicing, how to, you know, manage livestock, that kind of thing. So very sort of practical conservation career information, that, you know, how to run a business, all of these kind of useful things that would go on to serve me quite well. And I also learnt how to do survey work. And so there's a little clipboard in the corner there. So, you know, how to do bird surveys, how to, you know, identify plants, how to identify trees and that kind of thing. There's this opportunity at college to meet lots of other like-minded young people. The tutors were all amazing and specialists in their different fields. And I got to hang around with other departments, students from other departments, whether it was like gamekeeping or the farmers. So you kind of learn a bit more about their way of thinking and how they might want to manage the land in a different way from yourself. And so it kind of gives you a really good outlook and a broad understanding of how the countryside works. And I was really lucky that I managed to get some cool trips abroad through some European funded projects. So I was very lucky to go to Madeira to carry out butterfly moth surveys, and then present the results from that at a symposium in the Azores. So I feel very lucky to have been there. And then I was also able to go on a trip to Sweden, where we stayed with the forestry college for a week, and it meant that we could go out in their forests, chop loads of trees down with our newfound chainsaw skills, and then use heavy horses, these big shy horses, to drag the logs out of the timber, out of the woodland on sledges, because it was in the middle of winter. So we were pulling, you know, all the logs out of the wood on snowy ground, and that was, you know, quite an amazing experience. And again, to experience conservation and land management and that kind of thing in other countries was, you know, quite formative, you know, so important in my formative years. So on the back of this, just as my course was ending, a local national trust HQ got in contact with our tutors and said, is there anyone in your year that you think might like a seasonal ranger job at Whitley Common, which isn't too far away from where we were in college. So it's on the sort of Surrey, Hampshire, West Sussex border. And I was very happy to be put forward for that role. And it was just a 6 or 7 month role. And it meant I got my first sort of slice of action in the conservation world. So at the weekends, I was managing the Whitley Centre, which you can see in the top picture there. And it was a visitor centre where people could come in and buy an ice cream, or they could learn about heathlands and heathland management and the wildlife of heathlands, and learn, you know, pick up a map and learn where the routes were and that kind of thing. So I got to talk to all sorts of different people that were coming to visit, get them excited about wildlife and conservation. And then sort of during the week in that role, I was out with National Trust work parties that had come to stay there, do a bit of heathland management, everything from rhododendron pulling to, you know, actually going out and doing some like identification work, that kind of thing. So again, I got this really nice broad experience over a few months of working for the National Trust, which was really important. And I'm still in touch with my old boss from there, because this is quite a while ago. This is probably about 22 years ago, maybe even more than that, maybe 24 years ago. And I'm still in contact in the conservation world. You know, I'm still working with these people now, which is fantastic. And so, you know, that gave me a really good insight into conservation, what it's like to be a ranger in conservation, how to put some of those practical skills to use. So it was a, you know, fantastic start to my career. And then I knew my contract was coming to an end there. So I thought, gosh, I've got to think about what I'm going to do next. And I saw that the Sussex Wildlife Trust was advertising for a receptionist. So I thought, gosh, well, that sounds like an interesting place to be. Again, not too far away from where I live. And so I can still live at home with my mum and my brothers and travel in there every day and get some really good experience. And you kind of think, well, you know, maybe a bit boring to be on reception. But actually, I got to meet all these amazing people that were coming in to have meetings at the Wildlife Trust with the rest of the team there. You know, other sort of conservation managers, reserves managers, all the way through to, you know, policy managers. And I got to really get to know so many cool people that actually later on in my career, I still know all of them. And, you know, they've helped me through my career. And, you know, some of them have, I went to them and asked them to be sort of mentors, that have helped me develop my skills. And listening in on conservation kind of conversations, talking to people on the phone, and just sort of generally being in that environment was really good for me. So I would say it's a top tip, you know, don't always, like, for your first jobs in conservation, don't always like aim really high. Actually, it doesn't matter if you're going in at the bottom, because it's a foot in the door and it's getting you in the right place to meet the right people and get your name out there and get involved. Because on the back of this, you get to hear of, you know, things that are coming up that you can get involved with, events you can help with, volunteering that you can do. And, you know, you can start saying, oh, I've got, you know, a quiet hour here and there. Can you chuck a bit of extra work my way from your department? Because I'd like to learn more about what you do. And of course, you know, some of these places are based on nature reserves. So you get to go out on your lunch break and immerse yourself in nature and really get to sort of grips with, you know, learning your dragonflies or butterflies or birds. Just kind of start being part of, you know, a really cool organization that can really set you up well for the rest of your career. So I was, you know, again, really lucky that I could have this amazing opportunity. And a part of my reception role there also sort of came, you know, we realized lots of people were phoning in with these conservation queries, things like, oh no, there's a housing development right on my doorstep, what can I do to fight it? Or I've got this weird butterfly in my conservatory, can you help me identify it? You know, all these different questions that people come in to us with. And we realized there was a bit of a need for like a conservation care line that people could call up with their queries. So with some funding from, I think it was BA at the time, and the marketing team there, we managed to set up this amazing care line. And again, I learned loads because I was put on the spot by all these people phoning up with these queries, and I had to know the answers. So again, it pushed me to learn more about identification of species and policies and all of these kind of things. So really good. And again, sort of, saying, I'm willing to help and get involved was a really good move. So loved that. And I was there for a couple of years in that role. And then another amazing opportunity came up, and that was working for the Natural History Photographic Agency. This is based also in West Sussex in Ardingly. And this was run by an amazing high-speed photographer, wildlife photographer called Stephen Dalton. And he pioneered high-speed photography in the 1970s of wildlife. So you can see there a couple of his photos of a flying tawny owl and a chameleon catching some prey there. And he was an agent for a whole load of different wildlife photographers from all over the world and representing them in the UK. And so if someone came to us from a magazine or a calendar company or from a book company and said, hey, I've got this project, I'm doing an article about, I don't know, dolphins, and I need pictures of dolphins doing all these different things. My job as a picture researcher was to search for all that. We had transparencies then. This sounds like really old. It's before digital photography. And you go through all the filing cabinets and pick out loads of, dolphins jumping, dolphins eating, dolphins with their young. So, you kind of like trying to, fit all of these kind of their picture requests with what they were looking for. And inadvertently during this time, my desk was, a big light box, and I had a big magnifying loop that I was looking at the transparencies through. Through all of this, I was looking at pictures of wildlife all day, every day as my job, which was very cool. And it meant I got really good at identifying things. And whether it's British wildlife or international wildlife, I got to know all of this amazing exotic stuff, whether it was landscapes or actual species themselves. I had this amazing opportunity to learn all about wildlife around the world. And there's still places I go on holiday now, and I just happen to know what all the wildlife is, and it just comes back from somewhere at the back of my brain. It's quite interesting. So that was amazing. Again, I was there for about 2.5 years, and speaking to some amazing wildlife photographers from all over the world, people like Angela and Jonathan Scott, who used to do the Big Cat Diaries, Andy Rouse, Laurie Campbell, Nick Garber, specialists in Madagascar wildlife. So all these cool people, and I was getting to speak to them and talk about their photos, which was very cool. So again, a really interesting little kind of side shoot in my career there, which was really cool. Good for admin as well, and sort of processing things. And from there, I then saw there was a job advertised at the Sussex Biodiversity Record Centre. And this was actually for a GIS officer, so looking, doing mapping projects and that kind of thing. And I went for the interview, and I didn't quite have enough experience. And they said, sorry, there's someone else that's better than you, but we love your enthusiasm. And so I was like a bit gutted that I didn't get the job. And I thought, oh, well, went off. And 6 months later, another opportunity came up. And it was for an inquiries officer at the Record Centre. And previously, this is a amazing place. Is a depository for species and habitat data for the whole of Sussex, and each county has got a local environment record centre. And this Sussex Biodiversity Record Centre happens to be based at the Sussex Wildlife Trust, where I'd been based before. And when I was on reception, one of the things I'd offered to help with was a bit of data entry. So when people send in their species records, they've done a butterfly transect or some mammal trapping, they send all their data in, and then we had to digitize it all into the computer so that it was easy to search and report on. And so in some of my spare moments on reception, I'd offered to help do that. So I had a little bit of knowledge about how it all worked. And eventually I got this cool job as inquiries officer at the Record Centre. And so it meant that when people, were wanting data, any of the partners at local authorities or conservation organisations, if they came to us and said, oh, I really need a species list for this nature reserve, or can you tell us what protected species are in this area? Or if one of, a recorder would come to us and say, oh, I'm really interested in snails, can you tell me what snails have been recorded at this nature reserve before? So my job was to pull all that data out of a database, maybe put it on a map, or give them a nice long list of species or records for that species. And that was very cool. I really enjoyed that, and I got to meet a lot of amazing species recorders, and all sorts of, influential people there. And so I worked my way up from doing inquiries actually to ending up being the manager there after about 11 and a half years. So, I spent a lot of time in the Record Centre, and it really was, an amazing community of people. And I, still in touch with a lot of them now, and spent a lot of my career based at Woods Mill again. And I was very lucky that I had an amazing boss, which was Henry Brocklebank. She's still there, heading up. She's a director for conservation for the Wildlife Trust now, and she was so supportive as I grew into my role and just nurtured me on the way. So I feel very lucky again that I had someone like a mentor like Henry that would kind of support me as I grew and as I, got experience in my career. Now, another really influential person is bottom left there is Tony Whitbread, Dr. Tony Whitbread, and now he's the president of the Sussex Wildlife Trust, and I still get to work with him at Knepp now because he is a real visionary as far as kind of landscape scale conservation goes. And he was another fantastic mentor in my career and got me thinking big about conservation beyond kind of the boundaries of nature reserve. So I feel very lucky to have had Tony Whitbread in my life, which is, just great. And part of my role at the Record Centre was everything from organising big seminars. So every year we had this wonderful seminar where about 200 people would get together and talk about biological recording in Sussex. Everything from seals through to lichens, through to plants, through to, anything, birds, and we would have this amazing review every year that you can see in the middle there called Adastra. And that was a big write-up of what we'd all learned in the previous years through our species recording. So it really was quite an amazing place to be, and an amazing place for picking up all that experience and knowledge from other people. And then an even more amazing job came up, and that was, sorry, I've skipped ahead. So, okay, so another really important part of learning was volunteering. So I have volunteered with loads of different organisations in my time, and loads of them I'm still on their committees. So the Sussex Mammal Group is a big one. We do lots of longworth trapping, harvest mouse surveys, getting people excited on workshops and courses and talks. So I used to be a secretary on the Sussex Mammal Group. I've taken a bit of a step back now just because I'm so busy, but I'm very proud to still be involved with the Sussex Mammal Group. I'm in the Sussex Moth Group, and my husband is the chair of the Sussex Moth Group. I am the newsletter editor, and just stepping down from that, having done that for about 15 years. And we organise field events and indoor talks and that kind of thing. So I've done many a newsletter over the years, and I've absolutely loved that, and being with people that are passionate about going out and about with generators and moth traps. That's very good fun. I've also previously volunteered for Sussex Butterfly Conservation as a wider countryside butterfly survey coordinator. So that's organising surveys across Sussex that all feed into the national scheme, and also as a field event organiser, and also getting involved in surveys. So I've put brown hair streak up here. So that's brown hair streak butterfly, you can see that, and that's its eggs. And the brown hair streak is really quite elusive as an adult flying around, and the best way to survey for them is looking for their eggs. So I got involved as one of the many things that I've done over the years in helping to target 1 kilometre squares for the Sussex Butterfly Atlas, which you can see a picture of there, which was published a few years ago. And so we were going around in the winter bashing all these squares looking for blackthorn and little eggs on the blackthorn. So it was there's lots of things you can do to get involved in and volunteer, whether it's admin support through to social media, through to actual sort of field biology and going out and doing some survey work. I've also been the secretary, newsletter editor and field event officer for the Sussex Dragonfly Society. Now I'm on the committee still, but in a lesser role just because I don't have time. But I've actually really love going out on the dragonfly field events. And again, just being around people that are passionate about recording these species, getting the records in and helping do mapping exercises and atlases and that kind of thing. I've also volunteered a lot with the RSPB, so I've got involved with the Volunteer Farmer Alliance, where we get matched up with different farmers to go and survey their lands. There's a nice little skylark in the picture there. And then more recently, sort of over maybe the last 10, 15 years, My husband and I have been doing lots of stone leaves, surveying on the South Downs, and we're still doing that now, and helping to maximise the chances of this breeding bird, surviving it and basically coming back to the South Downs. So it's a very exciting project to get involved with. And also identifying species, for example, like the long-eared owl that are very under-recorded, going out revisiting old haunts of the long-eared owl to find out if they're still breeding in those places, and also looking for other similar habitat to establish if they're breeding in those areas. So it's not a kind of a time of year or a time of day that a lot of bird watchers are out. So it's kind of like normally sort of February, March time in the evenings to go out and listen for long-eared owls displaying. So, just furthering the knowledge of these sort of maybe under-recorded species is a really cool thing. So pick something unusual to focus on and get stuck in, that's what I say. I've also been doing a lot of bird ringing. So I've been bird ringing since 2015. I've got my C permit and hopefully going to aim for my A at some point in the future. And, we do part of the Sussex Barn Owl Study Group, which is very cool. So as well as looking in the barn owl boxes at Knepp, we're covering barn owl boxes across the whole of Sussex. So we're going out and talking to landowners and getting them excited about the prospect of having barn owls nesting on their land. And then lots of bird ringing all across Knepp and on a few other sites near to where I live. So all very exciting. And, what we're learning with this, feeds into the national database, the BTO National Ringing Database, but also helps us learn more about what's happening at Knepp and the importance of the scrubland that we've got there for nesting birds, but also birds on migration. And so that brings me nicely to my next step in my career, and that was becoming the ecologist at the Knepp Rewilding project. And initially my job was more about running the Knepp Safari business with my colleague Rachel, who runs the camping and glamping there. And I thought, God, this is a lovely, opportunity to get people excited about nature coming back to large areas, and talk about rewilding and that kind of resurgence of wildlife in our landscape. So I applied for this job and really lucky to have got that. And on the back of that, as well as the safaris, I'm doing a lot of the ecology and the research side of things, coordinating all the people that want to come and find out more about what we're learning at Knepp, about the birds that we've got at Knepp and the other wildlife and that kind of thing. So for those of you that don't know, Knepp Rewilding Project is in West Sussex, just south of Horsham. And it's all about having large herbivores as driving forces behind the sort of recovery of land. So Knepp used to be a really intensively farmed bit of land. They've sacked off the intensive farming, the dairy and the arable, and now we're letting these guys do all the hard work for us, the nibbling and the grazing and the browsing and the disturbance that helps nature come back to a landscape. So really excited that we're sort of about 22 years into this rewilding project now, and we're seeing amazing results from it. And I thought I'd put in a couple of slides just to show what it's like at Knepp if you've not visited before. So this is a kind of before, and as you watch, you can see how the scrubland emerges and how this wonderful landscape, is so green and full of life now, and full of wildlife. So, and here's another nice slide here showing how the corner of a wet field that was never really that good for farming because you was getting your tractor stuck in it because it was so wet, is now this amazing scrape that's got little grebe breeding on it. It's wonderful for aquatic plants and dragonflies and that kind of thing. And it's my job to monitor these things, so it's very exciting. So the Knepp estate is about 7 kilometres long, so it's a huge area and full of opportunities for wildlife, and whether it's the dung from the animals that's providing opportunities for dung beetles, the ancient trees that are so good for insects and fungi, the hedgerows that have been allowed to grow out, full of nectar sources and nesting opportunities, the little wet water, the sort of aquatic floodplains there that are good for all sorts of aquatic plants and water shrews and harvest mice, through to areas of open water and the river restoration and the wetwood. And the fact we're not putting any pesticides or ivermectins down, so no wormers are going through the animals. So it's a much better landscape for invertebrates that go on to be good for birds and bats as well. So it's a really wonderful landscape and a super place to be learning about how we can turn around the fortunes of a landscape in quite a short amount of time. So talk about some of my birdie experiences at Knepp and what we're learning. So very lucky to have been working with Lee Barber and Chris Hewson. So this is Chris from the BTO in the picture here, and we've this is the third year that we've been working with BTO on the cuckoo project. So looking at the migration routes of cuckoos and satellite tagging them to find out more about why they could be perishing on certain migration routes. So using a 3D printed cuckoo and a stuffed cuckoo and a triangle of nets and some cuckooing and bubbling calls of the female, we're able to lure some cuckoos into the nets and put little satellite tags on their backs that you can see there on the right hand picture. And then that data is fed back and displayed on the BTO cuckoo blog and on the website there to show these different routes and help us learn more about how they're doing. So we're really excited to be involved in that. We caught 4 cuckoos last week with Chris, and we're able to satellite tag 2 of them. So you'll go and have a look at the BTO website and the cuckoo pages, and hopefully they'll be up in the next few days if they're not already, and we can track their migration when they move off next month. Another species that is doing particularly well at Knepp is the nightingale. We have about 50 singing males, that's 50 singing males, which is a rather splendid thing. And again, sort of bird ringing is helping us learn more about how these birds are moving around the site and how they're moving as the scrub changes and succession changes. And we're doing everything from ringing the little nestlings in the nest through to the juveniles that you see top left there, and then the adults that you can see on the right. And so over time we're really sort of starting to build up a really interesting picture of how nightingales are responding to rewilding and the lovely scrubby habitat that they do so well in. Another species that we've got fairly good numbers of is the turtle dove. Again, this is a species that's seen huge declines. It's seen a 98% decline as a red list bird. We probably hold about a quarter of Sussex's turtle dove population at Knepp. And we've written some papers on it and working out, with the RSPB, we've been catching them and satellite tagging them, and that hasn't been analysed yet, so I haven't been able to show you any of that data. But we have been able to use some pretty interesting techniques. Again, working with an amazing mentors, Ken Smith, who used to be, a conservation director at RSPB, as Ken, making radio-controlled flapping turtle doves to try and attract turtle doves into our lure to catch them. So it's all been good fun working on that project, but I can't give you much more information about how that's gone at the moment. Also sort of learning, sort of this, you never stop learning of conservation and wildlife recording. And, we have a heronry that we do a count of every year. And again, we upload our data onto the BTO demography online for that, the heronry census data. And over the years, the numbers have been dwindling. And we thought, gosh, surely the heron numbers can't have dropped that much. But we went out in a boat on the mill pond where the heronry is, and we realised that the reason the numbers are dropping is because we just couldn't see them anymore. They'd gone right round the corner. And so what we did is from that, we could see a few more from the boat, and we thought, God, maybe we should go up with a drone and see what's going on. So flying quite high over the top of the heronry, so you're not disturbing them, we actually found we had 5 times more nests than we thought. So I think we thought we had like 6 nests or something. Actually, we had 30 nests. And you can see from the picture there, you can see like sitting adults, you can see chicks in the top left there, and then an egg in the left-hand picture as well. And you can see as time goes on, and the young herons they stick their bum over the edge of the nest, and you can see where they're doing their droppings around the edges. Really makes the nest stand out against sort of the dark background. So it's really easy to count the nests and see what you've got going on there. So again, embracing technology and coming up with new ways of recording wildlife. I love that kind of thing. There you go. There's a nice picture of some young in the nest there. And a real highlight of my career has been meeting Bernie Sanders. So he's a Democrat, US Senator, and he came to visit Knepp last year with a load of US senators, and he apparently doesn't smile much, but he smiled when I showed him a black cap in the hand. So bird ringing got Bernie Sanders excited, and that makes me very happy. So a real pinnacle of my career there. Other projects we're involved with at Knepp is the White Stork project, another birdie project, and that's a big partnership with Warsaw Zoo, Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation. You've probably heard of them from the White-tailed Eagle Reintroduction Project, the Cotswold Wildlife Park and the Wadhurst Park Estate. And the idea is that by 2030, we want to have 50 breeding pairs in southern England of the white stork. And we've been running this project since 2017, bringing rehabilitated storks in from Warsaw Zoo, where they might have hit power lines and be brought back to good health again. And since then, they've been making nests in the top of oak trees and on chimneys. And again, using the drone to monitor those nests, we can see how many eggs and how many chicks they've got. Okay, this is a couple of photos from this year. A couple of stalks on the top of an oak tree with some eggs, really lovely to see. At the moment, we've got chicks in the nest, so lots of chicks are hatching. I think we're on about 25 chicks so far, with some more eggs to go. That's a young bird, you can see there. They're very smelly by the time they get to that point. And what we do is we can go up with a tree climber or a cherry picker, and we lower them down out of the nest, and we're able to put rings on them. So you can see there's some Darvik rings down in the bottom left there. They're plastic rings that have got a unique number on them, so we can identify the birds in the field. And we have GB and then either numbers or letters, sorry. So that's been fun. So it's very exciting to have so many white storks in the sky at Knepp at the moment, and to see the project going really well. Another non-birdie project, which I think will create lots more habitat for birds, are the beavers. So really excited to have been involved with all the paperwork. I say excited to be involved with paperwork. It was terrible. 18 months of paperwork to finally get that signed off and to have beavers reintroduced at Knepp. The first pair didn't go according to plan. There was lots of escapes and that kind of thing. But now we have we got them back, but now we've got a different pair, and we're a completely enclosed pen, and they haven't escaped. And we're waiting to find out if perhaps we might have kits this year. Very excited if we do. There you go. There's Billy, the female. And this is our current pair, doing a little bit of bonding behavior there. Very cute. And they have been very busy indeed. In the pen, they've created in just over a year the most wonderful wetland habitat, where we're holding on to water through drought conditions like last summer, and then when we have big flood events like we have over this winter, they are really holding back the water, slowing the flow down. And as you see, there's a beaver at the front, they're dragging an oak branch, and there's one bringing up the rear, which is quite good fun. They've taken that back to their lodge, and they've built up this massive lodge where they live, and they pack clay all over it, and it makes it nice and cool in the summer and nice and warm in the winter. So the beavers are going really well. I'm very excited to find out maybe in the next month or so if we've got any kits or not. Other projects I'm involved with setting up the monitoring of, as well as the rewilding project. We have a regenerative farm at Knepp as well there. So you can see to the left of the rewilding project there, we've got a regen farm, and that's got 8 survey fields. And so we've taken back pony paddocks and fields that have been a bit wrecked by sheep, and we're putting them back into a really nice kind of mob grazing with cattle, where they're moved on every day. And we've got a market garden and a little chicken flock. And it's just thinking about sort of more wildlife friendly farming. It fits really nicely. It sits nicely alongside the rewilding project. So thinking about dung beetle traps, butterfly surveys, bird surveys, looking at bumblebees, all sorts of lovely wildlife recording there to show how over time we can change the fortunes of a bit of land. We've also been rewilding the walled gardens. This is up at Knepp Castle, where my office is. There used to be a croquet lawn here just a couple of years ago, and now we've got this amazing rewilded garden with crushed kind of concrete substrate from old building sites and Mediterranean planting, so less water is needed over time for watering it, because climate change is obviously going to have an effect, with how dry our gardens get. So thinking ahead about how we can have a more resilient garden, and of course no mowing, which is brilliant. So no fuel or mowers needed there, much less intensive on the sort of human intervention side of things, just like the rewilding project. Also, we're pulling together, having the chance to get involved in some really cool projects, bringing back the red-backed shrike, a species that's gone extinct as a breeding bird in the UK, working with the Knepp Wildland Foundation, which is our charitable arm, Natter England. We're hoping to start getting this on the road. We've done a feasibility report, and we're hoping over the next year or so, we're going to really get this going, get some shrikes back into our landscape. And again, this isn't just at Knepp, but it will be within the wider landscape, working with lots of landowners and farmers locally too. And also we have Operation Wallacea summer camps for young people at Knepp. These are amazing camps. We offer bursaries. So if you did want to come along, do have a look. I think we've still got spaces on this. There's lots of week camps over 8 weeks, and you get to experience in how to, learn how to be a botanist, how to, do some entomology, how to identify birds, how to go bird ringing, how to analyze data, how to use habitat analysis. All these amazing things are offered through this Operation Wallacea camp, and you'll be surrounded by fellow young people also on the beginning of their conservation journeys. So a really amazing opportunity. So do take a look on Operation Wallacea website for more information. And on the back of this, I really feel like, because birds are a big thing at Knepp, a big success story, we're hoping that we might be able to get some kind of funding set up to do future bird research, maybe set up a bird research station. And a key thing there would also be, focus on getting young people upskilled in bird ringing and doing bird surveys and other surveys that can help us learn more about how bird life can respond to rewilding. So we're looking for sponsors for that at the moment. I've written up a proposal, and we're hoping in the next couple of years we might be able to get something up and running, and hopefully I'll see some of you on those camps too. We also are very supportive of the Young Wilders movement. Again, it's a great website, go and check it out. And we held a youth summit at Knepp last year, and we've got another one this September. So go and check out the Young Wilders website, because I have more details about that. It's going to be a whole weekend, and that is a massive manifesto that was drawn up in just one day with 100 young people that came to lay down the law, what they wanted to see happen in their lifetime, in even shorter terms than that, in the next 5 years, of what they want, where they want it, and when they want it. And it's very inspiring. There's a lot of weight on young people's shoulders of like, well, you're on the next generation, you're going to have to sort out the mess of the previous generations. And actually we want to support that movement and just say, you're not alone, you've got support. And that we want to be able to facilitate that. So again, that's all through the Knepp Wildland Foundation. Young people and getting young people upskilled in conservation is a very key thing for us. Part of the Knepp Wildland Foundation movement is also the Will to Waves corridor. This started off being a 50-mile corridor linking Knepp down to the sea and up to the Ashdown Forest, and that's got even bigger now. So it's 100-mile long with lots of offshoots. And lots of conservation organisations and landowners and farmers involved in that movement too. So it's a really exciting time, I think, for conservation and for young people in conservation too. There's a lot of opportunities, and we certainly want to be supporting young people on their journey through what we can at Knepp. So thank you very much for listening. Very happy to take questions, Jasmine. And if any of you are into podcasts, do check out the Knepp Wildland Podcast, which is available on Apple and Spotify and all your other podcast platforms. So do check it out and take a look online at the Knepp Wildlife, it's Knepp Wildland website and so on, and hopefully see some of you there visiting in the near future. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Penny. It's been amazing to hear about all of the different stuff you've got up to. Like I said at the beginning, sounds like you've done just about everything in the conservation sector. So yeah, I think if it's okay with you, we're gonna jump right in with some questions.
No problem.
So I'm just scrolling through the chat. Right, I've got a question here from Rosie, who's actually one of our youth advisory panel members, who asks, how would you suggest young people get involved with surveying and volunteering? What do you think is the best way to find opportunities?
Hi Rosie, that's a really good question, and it is difficult because a lot of people like me are so busy that we don't always have the capacity to take young people out with us, and obviously there's all the whole DBS checks and everything that goes with it. So I would say, I mean, the Operation Wallacea camps are fantastic because they are set up for young people, and they will give you, they're led by lots of volunteers that are specialists in their fields. They're ornithologists, entomologists, people like Erica McAllister, who's Fly Girl from the Natural History Museum, comes down and runs some of the course there as well. There's loads of evening talks. There's like, you're out all day, every day doing cool survey work. So that's quite a cool opportunity to really immerse yourself in species recording, getting to grips with it. I would say get involved with your local groups, contact your local moth group, your local dragonfly group, your local botanical group, see what takes your fancy. What is it that really piques your interest, and what are you interested in? Is it springtails? Is it water beetles or weevils or whatever? There's lots of people out there, lots of mentors that are willing to help train up the next generation of recorders. Find somewhere that can offer internships or 6 weeks placements or something like that. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and there's some great, you've obviously got a youth panel there. You've got young wilders doing great things as well. So it feels like there's a lot of amazing people out there. There's a focus on nature, which is really good. Action for Conservation, another good organisation, all doing good stuff for young people in conservation. So I think there's lots of opportunities. There's a lot more opportunities for you guys now than there was when I was younger. And I feel like you've probably got a bit of a head start on me, because I didn't really know much about conservation. I hadn't really been exposed to it much, until I was perhaps like 17 or 18. Whereas I think now there's a lot more encouragement for young people to get involved in conservation. There's a lot more out there and a lot more support for getting people into it. So I think you're in a good place.
That's a brilliant answer. Thank you so much. I've got another question in. I've got a few in the chat. So Jack would like to know if there's any other species you would like to introduce at Knepp.
Oh, that's a good question, Jack. So we're also looking at, as well as the red-backed shrike, we're looking at the black-veined white butterfly, and that needs kind of the same habitat as the red-backed shrike, so it would go hand in hand quite nicely. It needs nectar sources, it needs scrub, it needs hawthorn, and it needs a landscape. So again, thinking big, pushing beyond the boundaries of just Knepp or a nature reserve, we're thinking across landscape. So I think black vein white would be very cool to get going as well, and hopefully the next year or two we'll be looking at that. And then there's obviously other opportunities going forward, potential for bringing water vole back to the catchment, again working with partners across catchments, and potentially other species too, but I have to keep the lid on what else we've got up our sleeve.
Oh my gosh, that all sounds so exciting. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit caught up on the beavers still. I think that's up top for me.
Oh, they're so amazing, and they are creating the most wonderful habitat for other wildlife. So seeing what's coming back into the beaver pen is like really, really exciting, because it just feels like they seem like just the most obvious solution to a load of our problems. Because not only they're eliminating flooding, they're sequestering carbon, they're helping to keep water in a landscape, a dry landscape during droughts. They're making the most wonderful habitat for other wildlife as well.
Yeah, they're so fantastic that you get to have them there at that site as well. I've got another question here. This is from Florence, who would like to know what's your most favourite bird sighting?
Oh, Florence, that's a really good question. Well, I never get bored of nightingales and hearing the nightingales. I love going out in the middle of the night to hear the nightingales, because everything else has gone to bed and it's very quiet, and all you can hear is the amazing song of the nightingale through the night sky, and it's very magical. So I love that. But I'm just trying to think what other things really get me excited. I think the turtle dove has got to be another one high on my list, and that very gentle purring, and the fact that this is a species that's so rare now that a lot of people have never heard it in their lifetime, and I get to hear it nearly daily, and I feel very, very fortunate indeed that that's the case for me. And ringing, when we're bird ringing in the autumn, we never know what we're going to get in the nets, so every time you visit the nets, what's going to be next. So occasionally, you know, we're catching a flycatcher or a grasshopper warbler. You know, last year we caught a turtle dove in the net. We never, you know, imagined that that would be the case, and that was very exciting. So yeah, I just like the fact that you never know what's going to happen next at Knepp. That's the most exciting thing for me.
Lovely, thank you. Got a question here from Raman, who asks, well, they say, I'm at uni and a lot of our lecturers say we need to develop transferable skills. Are there any particular ones you'd consider important to develop?
That's a really good question. So I would say, like, what a really key part of my job is facilitating. And that is just being happy, enthusiastic, just smoothing the way to make things happen, linking people together, and being open to making things happen. I don't know, it's a very weird skill, and it's not something you can really kind of plan. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go and learn how to be a really good business person. But it's like one of those things, just to have that kind of enthusiasm and be upbeat and happy to facilitate, I'd say, is a really good thing, and get people excited. You know, I think that's a really important part of my role, is to get people excited about nature and what's possible. So I'd say that's a really key skill. I would say, you know, get to grips with the species group. So, like, you know, whatever you want to choose, like as I mentioned earlier, whether it's weevils or lichens or birds or whatever, you know, get to grips with something really well and get good at it. And again, find a mentor, someone that can help you develop those skills, because that will be really invaluable. And I think it also helps you be a better ecologist. If you can understand what species need in the landscape, it helps you understand habitat management and what kind of things you need to do on the back of it. I'd say do lots of reading, and make sure you're, you know, watching, you know, documentaries and what people are up to, attend webinars and conferences, and just, you know, absorb information and be around the right people, and just pick up on other people's excitement and enthusiasm. You know, it's an amazing career choice, and it's not a 9 to 5, I would say, as well. That's another key thing, is that, you know, this is a lifestyle choice. You do it because you're passionate about it, and, you know, you will all make a difference. Sometimes, you know, people are getting eco anxiety, and it can feel overwhelming that, you know, everything's a bit doom and gloom. But put yourself in a position of hope, and kind of keep the fire burning for it, because every single one of us is doing something in conservation, getting other people excited about nature. We're all, you know, doing something really important. So I'd say you have the enthusiasm and the excitement that get you jumping out of bed every morning to go and do it. Sorry, that was a bit of a long rambly answer, but enthusiasm, that's a good skill to develop.
That was really lovely. I feel really inspired from that. It's so true, isn't it? Yeah, that was really lovely. Thank you. Going in a slightly different direction with this question. So Danny says, this is a bit of a complex question, but in terms of the funding for the Knepp estate as a whole, what sort of places does it come from? So countryside stewardship schemes, research grants, private finances, kind of what sort of areas are you getting funding from?
That's a good question. So at the moment, we have loads of different funding streams coming in that's all helping to prop up the business model of rewilding, which is, you know, why we were quite keen to share the case study of Knepp with other people. So, you know, we do very much wear our heart on our sleeve with it. So we do have countryside stewardship that feeds in to the estate. We have the ecotourism business, so camping, glamping and safaris. We have all the old dairy barns and units that were once used as farm buildings are now, you know, rented out to light industrial use. So we've got really cool, we've got an organic chocolate company, which is very useful, all the way through to sail makers. We've got our own butchery, and we're bringing value to our own business with the meat that is harvested from the rewilding project. So the beef and the venison and the pork. So again, that's all bringing value in. And we're just restoring a load of lovely old barns to have a cafe and shop, rewilding cafe and shop. And again, that's going to create loads of jobs and bring more money into the estate to keep the whole thing floating. Going forward, rewilding is, going to be financed a lot by natural capital, so like biodiversity net gain and carbon credits. And this is all, new emerging markets that's definitely worth. Actually, I've got a podcast about it, talking to someone who makes it very simple. So check that out if you want to learn more about biodiversity net gain and carbon credits, because that's a huge market that's emerging that's going to support more rewilding, more conservation, more landscape scale connectiveness. So that is definitely going to be an important funding stream for us all in the future. So that's another thing that's, if you're thinking of upskilling, that's a good thing to know about, because that's definitely coming up soon, if not now.
Awesome, thank you. We're kind of coming towards the end of the session now, so I think I'm just going to give you one last question. So I'd like to know, what do you think is the most challenging part of your role at Knepp, and what is the most enjoyable part of your role there?
Really good questions, Jasmine. So I'd say the most challenging roles, but that also makes it one of the most enjoyable part of my role, is juggling so many different things. So sometimes I'm thinking, I'm ordering toilet paper, one cool thing in my CV is I had to organise a portaloo for David Attenborough. How cool is that? So juggling, like ordering really simple things, or like binoculars for the safaris, or doing some admin to do with some people coming on safaris, or website admin, that kind of thing, all the way through to, volunteers turning up to mine. I have to go to the shop and I'm buying croissants and coffee and milk, all that kind of thing. So, juggling all of that, and at the same time thinking, okay, I've got these PhD students turning up tomorrow and they want to be doing this, and I've got to prepare what I'm going to be talking to them about, and I've got a visiting group of Natter England farm advisors the day after, and I've got to do a presentation for them. So it can be really challenging to be jumping from one really random thing, ordering satellite tags for storks one day and not being able to get hold of them, through to organising a cherry picker to get up to, there's 100 million different things on my to-do list every day, which is very challenging, but at the same time keeps it really interesting. So the most amazing thing about my job is getting people excited about nature and about rewilding, and the hope that it's giving us all. And I think hope is a really key word for us all, especially for me, that to show that we can turn around the fortunes of wildlife and landscapes and conservation in the UK. We can make those changes, and I think that's what gets me out of bed every morning. I absolutely love it, and just going out and being wild in the scrub, sort of rummaging in the hedgerows, that's where I'm my happiest. Definitely away from emails. So if you're looking at careers in conservation, you're going to be doing a little bit of everything, whether it's social media to ordering the toilet paper to doing a bit of admin to getting people excited in the field. Embrace it all, and it's all part of the big rich tapestry that is conservation, and you will have a wonderful career and a wonderful life, I promise.
Oh my gosh, what a perfect note to end it on. Thank you so much. Thank you from everyone. I know we've had some people saying in the comments about how much they've enjoyed hearing from you. It's been really fantastic to have you here this evening. So I think with that, our session is sort of coming to a close, but I think, yes, Chris is just popping up some slides for me. So before we finish up this evening, I'm just going to share with you a couple of exciting upcoming things we've got with BTO Youth. So as you can see the slide here, we're super excited to announce that our BTO Youth Hub is now live on our website. So I think Rachel's just popped a link in the chat if you want to check that out. And this is your one-stop place to find all info BTO Youth. So if you've really enjoyed tonight's session, you can check out the Youth Hub on the website for more events, sort of like newsletters, all the stuff that's happening. Yeah, we've got our BTO Youth newsletter as well, which you can sign up to. This is just a free e-newsletter that comes out, I think it might be every month, which basically just gives you all the details about events. You can stay up to date with everything, make sure you don't miss any fantastic sessions like this evening. And there's also, we have like a monthly challenge, which you can win prizes from as well. Another upcoming event, so the next episode of Nature Natters, which I think might be our last one of the series, is with Jocelyn, as you can see on the screen here. This is another really exciting session. I think Jocelyn is a PhD student at Cambridge, an environmental advocate and the founder of Climate in Colour. So a really another exciting person we're happy to hear from. So that was on the 6th of June, I think, so that's 2 weeks today. We also run an equipment donation scheme. So this is where people can submit their pre-loved equipment to us. And if you're 11 to 21, if you're an individual or part of a school group, you can apply for this if you don't already have any bird watching equipment. And this is just a way for you to be able to get into it. And then there's all of our socials as well, if you're interested in what BTO Youth gets up to and any of our other events. So with that, we've reached the end of our session. So thank you so much again to Penny for joining us this evening. And thank you for everyone for coming along. I hope you've all enjoyed yourselves as much as I have.
Thanks for having me. It's been amazing. Thank you. And good luck with your careers.